This podcast is made possible by the generous support of the American people through the United States Agency for International Development. The content of this podcast are the sole responsibility of its creators and does not necessarily reflect the views of USAID or the United States government.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the WABiLED podcast. I'm Darius Barrow from WABiLED. That is the West Africa Biodiversity and Low Emissions Development Program, sponsored by the United States Agency for International Development. WABiLED has three objectives. One is combating wildlife trafficking and also conserving great apes. And two is reducing deforestation, forest degradation, and biodiversity loss. And objective three is promoting low emissions development. We're here today because September 27th is World Tourism Day. And since we're in the environmental sector, we are promoting ecotourism. And the theme of this year's World Tourism Day is rethinking tourism. So we have with us today two of WABiLED's grantees. These are people we've worked with to carry out conservation activities across West Africa. These are two of our grantees, Tacugama Wildlife Sanctuary, based in Freetown, Sierra Leone, and Libassa Wildlife Sanctuary, based in Monrovia, Liberia. We have with us Susan Wiper from Libassa and Adriana Pizzi from Tacugama. So, I will start first with Susan Wiper. Susan, please tell us what you do at Libassa Wildlife Sanctuary.
Hi, Darius. Thank you very much for inviting us on. Yes, I'm the director at the Libassa Wildlife Sanctuary. We're about an hour and a half out of Monrovia. And we care, rehabilitate, and reintroduce as many animals as we can back into the wild, working very, very closely with the FDA, the local government.
Thank you. So, Adriana Pizzi, please tell us what you do at Tacugama Wildlife Sanctuary.
Hello, Darius. Thanks also for the invitation. I'm very honored and happy to be in this program today. So I'm the ecotourism manager of Tacugama Chimpanzee Sanctuary.
Thank you. So these two wildlife sanctuaries are dealing with conservation, ecotourism. So first I'll start with Adriana. Tell me, what is it like at Tacugama Wildlife Sanctuary? What will I see when I go visit Tacugama?
So, a little bit of story of Tacugama. It was founded in 1995 by Bala Amara Sekaran with the help of the government of Sierra Leone and the Conservation Society of Sierra Leone. So initially was established to rescue, care, rehabilitate confiscating chimpanzees that were kept by pets, orphan, or abandoned wild chimpanzees. So, as you may know, the western chimpanzee is critically endangered and is facing a serious risk of extinction. So its main threats are habitat loss and poaching. Therefore, our mission in Tacugama has also expanded to tackle this issue. So it's not only a sanctuary. Tacugama now is engaged in community outreach, research, environmental education, advocacy, law enforcement, and ecotourism activities. So in Tacugama, we believe in the power of ecotourism to support conservation efforts and benefit the communities. And we use ecotourism to raise awareness of the critical state of the chimpanzees in Sierra Leone. So to meet these goals, if you go to Tacugama, we run ecotourism activities such as the sanctuary tours with a high component of visitor education of the western chimpanzees. We do a variety of hikes in the Western Area Peninsula National Park, where the sanctuary is located, and visitors learn about the flora, the fauna in the area. We also do some bird watching tours, fundraising events, and we have 6 eco-lodges, so people can stay overnight and enjoy a very beautiful and relaxed night in the forest. So that's a little bit in a nutshell what you can find in Tacugama.
Oh, it sounds really exciting, Adriana. Definitely, I would be interested in seeing Tacugama anytime I'm in Freetown. So let's hear a little bit about Libassa Wildlife Sanctuary in Monrovia. Susan, please tell us about it.
A little bit of background about how Libassa Wildlife Sanctuary came to be here. The Libassa Eco Lodge was started 10 years ago this year, actually, by Rudolph and Lisa Antoine. And it's in a beautiful part, about an hour out of Monrovia, with the beach on one side and we have a lagoon on the other. They were building the lodge, which has started as a small eco lodge and has gradually grown, and the forest around it is protected and wonderful. But they were seeing quite a lot of pets in town. They were seeing quite a lot of monkeys, birds, all sorts of things, and they wanted to do something about it. So they started the Libassa Wildlife Sanctuary in the same location, but across the road. So in 2015, they started to work with the FDA, the local forestry government, and did an MOU, which basically says that all animal species which are protected in Liberia by law since 2016 would, if they were confiscated or relinquished, because it's also illegal to have them as pets, they would come to the sanctuary where we would care for them, rehabilitate them, and wherever possible, put back into the wild.
Okay, so that's very interesting because Tacugama is focused on chimpanzees, and Libassa is focused on other animals. And when you get chimpanzees, you send them to another sanctuary. So I see the similarities and the differences. I just want to ask you, Susan, now that you have Libassa, do you see the potential for more ecotourism opportunities in Liberia?
Well, Darius, one of the great things that we're doing, and we're doing with the WABiLED program, is we're going to release the first group of city mangabees back into the wild in Wakola Forest, in up the top, going towards Sierra Leone at Lake Pizzi. And interestingly enough, Rudolph and Lisa have just signed with the local government to build a lodge there. So with the releases we're doing there and with the lodge there as well, the conservation effort is going to be amazing. And the ecotourism benefits for the local community, for the country, I think is going to be immense.
Okay, so these mangabees, let me get it right. They're monkeys, right?
Yeah, they're city mangabees, Circocebus atius. They are a very popular pet here, unfortunately, in Liberia, and we've got about 63, and we're hoping to release about 23 of them. Well, there was 23, but we had a birth the other day. We don't advocate in sanctuaries giving birth because that's not the idea. But because we've known for a while that we want to release this group, we have no contraception implants in the females, and we just had a baby about 2 weeks ago.
Okay, thank you. So you also mentioned the connectivity between Lake Pizzi and Sierra Leone, because it's very close to the Sierra Leone border. So now I would like to ask Adriana, do you see high potential for ecotourism in Sierra Leone?
Sure. Sierra Leone has definitely a high potential for ecotourism. The tourism area in Sierra Leone is not very developed, but this is actually represents a unique opportunity to develop it in a sustainable way. So Sierra Leone has a variety of ecosystems, like amazing white sandy beaches, tropical forests, mountains. It has 4 national parks with a great diversity and unique plants and animal species where different environmental friendly activities can be carried out, such as snorkeling, hiking, bird watching, whale watching, and other types of activities. It's very rich in cultural heritage, with more than 50 national heritage sites linked to the Sierra Leone's history. Music, dance is a big part of Sierra Leone's culture. The Mende people, in particular, is very known for their traditional songs. So all these natural, historical, and cultural assets of Sierra Leone are great potentialities to develop ecotourism and be used as an effective tool for sustainable development for the country.
Yeah, that's a lot of potential for these two countries, and we know that a lot of times it's about tourists coming into the countries and coming to see these attractions. So, by the way, Adriana, how many guests do you receive every year at Tacugama Wildlife Sanctuary?
So that varies, of course. At least the figures of last year, we received 40,000 visitors that did the sanctuary tour and around 300 guests that stays overnight. Last year, something curious is that after Corona, we noticed a very high increase of nationals coming to Tacugama to do the sanctuary tour compared to other years where perhaps more expats or international tourists come. So that was a very positive observation that we noticed from 2021.
Yes, that's very impressive, and I can tell that it's been climbing and growing over the years. Susan, how do you see it in Liberia? Do you get these numbers of guests? Is Liberia also receiving many tourists from around the world? And who are these tourists? Where do they come from?
So at the Libassa Wildlife Sanctuary, our tourists, the Eco Lodge have mainly 98% of their tourists are locals. We don't have many international tourists. The local market really isn't that interested in the wildlife, although we're working on it very hard. But our tours are quite low numbers. We have 3 tours a day. We have tours daily at 11 o'clock, 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock, but quite often we don't have any tours at all. So weekends, we do have a bit of an expat market come up and they would come on tours. But I think with the ecotourism, if we start getting international trade into Liberia, I think it will progress a lot more.
Adriana, based on what we're hearing about the tours, the number of people coming to visit the sanctuaries and the eco lodges, is the ecotourism business profitable in Sierra Leone?
Well, I can talk about Tacugama for now only, and we have put a lot of effort in the ecotourism department. This is one of the, we could say, biggest incomes to support the operations of the sanctuary and some of Tacugama's conservation project. So, yes, from the ecotourism department, we get some revenues from the eco lodges, the sanctuary tours, some hikes that we do in the national park. We have a gift shop, so we sell some local craft, also some books about Tacugama, and then we do some fundraising events. So we have noticed that, especially with the people that stay overnight, the sanctuary tours and the events that we do, like yoga retreats or jazz and blues night, with those mainly three activities. It's let's say, the highest sources of income from the ecotourism department.
Yes, that sounds very promising. Definitely, with the potential that we have, ecotourism, I'm sure there's more that needs to be done. So, Susan, if you had more substantial investment, what more would you do with Libassa or beyond Libassa? And what more would you do in terms of ecotourism in Liberia? So, if you had a good investor, how would you expand your current business?
Okay, so I think the way of expanding is in the ecotourism. Now, ecotourism about people seeing wildlife in the forest naturally, and that's what the attraction is, seeing them naturally. So the sanctuary is where animals go when they've been taken out of their natural environment.
Okay, so are there some places?
Yeah, I think that's it. The thing that we found is that Rudolph told me since he's been down to Lake Pizzi and we've been working on the Eco Lodge, there's been many people around the forest that are very focused on conservation. So where there used to be trails going through the forest, they're now regenerating. So there's the FDA are very prominent there now as well. It's a very highly protected area. And with the Eco Lodge going in as well, not only is it protecting the wildlife that is already there, we do release in that area, and we are going to release monkeys in that area, but it's also going to give lots of sustainable livelihoods to the local people, which is really important. And I think that it'll be really nice when Liberia starts to really see the value in their country and their wildlife staying where it should be.
Adriana, so if you have more money, how would you expand Tacugama throughout Sierra Leone?
So, Darius, this is something that Tacugama already has in mind and has been planning for some time. As I told you before, we truly believe in the power of ecotourism as a tool for conservation of nature and the well-being of local communities. So we started to plan or to develop the first country ecotourism circuit, and we have identified 4 sites with unique landscape and very rich in natural and cultural heritage, where we would like to develop some ecotourism. That, of course, it would depend on finding funding for it.
You also mentioned Otama Kilimi National Park. This is a landscape that you're working in, and you're also getting support from WABiLED, USAID. Am I correct?
Yes, you're totally correct. We're getting support from WABiLED for conservation projects, and not related to ecotourism itself, but for the conservation projects that Tacugama runs.
Yes. Susan, we were talking about Lake Pizzi and Wakola Forest, which is located within the Lake Pizzi landscape. And what are some of the other features that can be found, attractive features for ecotourism in this Lake Pizzi Wakola landscape?
This area is absolutely beautiful. You've got the wonderful beaches. As I say, ecotourism wise, it's a gem. So within the sea, you can go fishing, or you could go and see the manatees. Now, the manatees apparently come down when the rains come down from Sierra Leone and then go back again. So amazing. Within the forest, we have chimpanzees. We don't have anything like the leopards. But we've also been releasing for a couple of years now in this forest. So they've got the CITES 1 endangered white-bellied pangolin. We've released black-bellied pangolins. Liberia has quite a lot of duiker species. and it had been quite hard to keep them alive. They're very stressful species, and they're prone to pass away on the way to release.
Adriana, on the Sierra Leone side, where you have the Luma Mountain and even the Okutama Kilimi National Park, what are some attractive features that can be seen in these landscapes?
So in OKNP, which is actually the first national park of Sierra Leone, it's very rich in biodiversity, very rich in mammals, amphibians, reptiles, fish. There are 9 species of primates in the area, included 4 that are threatened species, such as the western chimpanzee, the red Columbus monkey, the black and white Columbus monkey, and the sooty mangabe. There is a small population of western elephants, and we have also seen in the camera trappings of a leopard recently that we were very enthusiastic about it. You can find there also the hippopotamus. So there is a beautiful river there where you can do some trips with a canoe and see the hippopotamus. So it's very rich in biodiversity. There is also a long list of bird species that you can find, more than 100 bird species. So it definitely has a lot of unique wildlife that can be found in OKNP.
Okay, that's great. Now, with all the good things that we can find in these landscapes, both in Sierra Leone and Liberia, we all understand that these places are under threat. And we know that the threats vary, and some places have different threats compared to other places. So, Adriana, in OKNP, what are the threats to these wildlife species you mentioned, or even their habitat, the forests? What are the threats in Okutama Kilimi National Park?
So the biggest threat, of course, is habitat loss. And there's a lot of poaching, natural fire, mining. So as I mentioned before, we have a project going on with a partnership with the White Chimpanzee Foundation. So these challenges, these threats have been identified, and they have been, they will be addressed by different means. So bringing law enforcement, providing capacity building, training, institutional support, creation of efficient management plan for the protected area, establish a monitoring system of socioeconomic welfare and gender equality. They're going to develop a community-based natural resource management. So among other actions that will try to minimize these threats that you can find in OKNP to try to preserve it the most as possible. And this, of course, will enable us in the future to, perhaps start developing ecotourism in the area.
Yes, that's great to know because with all these problems, it's very refreshing to know that there are some solutions being put in place. And now, Susan, on the Liberia side, particularly Lake Pizzo, you've talked about all the great attractions there, but are there some issues around roads, electricity that we need to work on, or is everything fine and sweet?
Actually, getting to Robertsport is a fairly good road, apart from in the rainy season. But it's like the same as Adriana said. We do have problems with hunting, people doing fires, poaching, mining, unsustainable farming. And I think it's all a matter of getting in there and starting to talk to the communities, starting to see what they want, starting to let them see the benefit of having the animals in the forest, but also having ecotourism starting up. Ecotourism doesn't just benefit, say, a lodge that starts up. It benefits the local communities. If you can get people that know the forest very well, may even be an ex-poacher. You know, if they know the forest well, let's get them doing the tours. Let's get them showing people the forest. We need something that's sustainable, something that's going to bring great, not just economic value, but they have to have sustainable value. And it also has to ensure that the forest is preserved for their generations in the future.
That is right, Susan. And finally, I just want to touch on how other ecotourism enterprises are coordinating with you, and whether there's an umbrella organization in Liberia, an association of ecotourism groups, because a lot of times when we have more people or businesses involved in a specific thing, we can always have more hope, more opportunities, more room for collaboration. So is that happening in Liberia or even with government?
Yeah, so we actually have LINT here, which is the Liberia National Tourism Association, of which Rudolph and Lisa are really heavily involved with. It's a non-profit organisation, and the purpose of them is to unify the voices of tourism operators. So they get together the airlines, the hotels, the catering trades, car hire, travel agencies, all tour operators, and all foster and encourage to promote not only development but sustainable development. And they want to show the viability of the tourism industry in Liberia. So yes, there is an umbrella organisation that tries to bring everyone together to work towards the same goal.
It's great to know that Liberia has one, but perhaps Adriana, we could speak to how Tacugama may even be involved in some collaboration with other groups in Sierra Leone.
Sure, we work closely with a national tourism board that, for example, actually they just visit us 2 days ago because they want to start a new ecotourism project in Banana Island. So they wanted to go to Tacugama, which is an example of ecotourism in Sierra Leone, to get a little bit inspired of our eco-lodges, how we run the ecotourism department. So we work closely and collaborate with the National Tourism Board. Also, well, I don't know if you're aware, but in Sierra Leone, the national animal is a chimpanzee, the Western chimpanzee. And this was also a collaboration between the Ministry of Tourism and Tacugama behind that was working to promote the chimpanzee as a national animal and change a little bit the promotion of the flag of Sierra Leone, that perhaps it has a dark history regarding diamonds or the war, and to change a little bit of the perspective for the tourism and also national identity with the chimpanzee. So with the National Tourism Board and sometimes with the Ministry of Tourism, we have some collaborations together.
Wow, that's wonderful. So in both Liberia and Sierra Leone, there's collaboration between ecotourism organizations as well as the government. So that tells us that there's a lot of potential. And in closing, we are talking about rethinking tourism for this year's World Tourism Day. So what would be your last words, Adriana, in terms of rethinking tourism?
For me, at least here in Sierra Leone, that as I mentioned at the beginning, here we have the unique opportunity to actually plan ahead tourism and focusing ecotourism itself, since this industry here is not very developed, we can definitely use ecotourism, since there are so many natural areas here, to use it as a tool for conservation of the environment and benefit also for the well-being of community. So, as I mentioned before, I really believe in the power of ecotourism that needs to be planned ahead. Of course, it's a lot of effort, a lot of work, but doing a lot of focus in planning and to align the private sector, the public sector, organizations, and work together, for the sustainable development of the country.
Thank you. And Susan, how would you rethink tourism on the Liberia side?
I think Liberia should start thinking very big. I think that, as I mentioned, most of it is domesticated tourism. We should be thinking international tourism. Fantastic forests, fantastic areas. People will pay a lot of money to come to Liberia. So I think in rethinking, we should just think bigger. We should think international. We should be competing with different countries. As Adriana said, there's a lot of power in ecotourism, and ecotourism should benefit everybody. It benefits from people who are selling bananas on the street to people who are building hotels, and it also really, really benefits the country. So ecotourism I just see as a win-win industry all round.
All right. Thank you, ladies. Once again, this was the WABiLED podcast for World Tourism Day 2022. And leaving you with this, we have two grantees, Tacugama Wildlife Sanctuary and Eco Lodge, and Libassa Wildlife Sanctuary and Eco Lodge. Two groups in neighboring countries. And we hope when we talk about collaboration and rethinking tourism, that possibly these two groups can come together to increase ecotourism in both countries. So with that being said, goodbye. Adriana, Susan, goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.